Welcome to the Drum Shuffle, a podcast offering insights, perspectives, and conversations for drummers. I'm your host, Jamie Eads.
Hey, how's it going out there, everybody? Welcome to the Drum Shuffle. Jamie Eads joining you as I do each and every week. This is episode 142. I hope everybody is having a great week out there. I hope everybody's new year is off to a great start. A little bit late for me. It's February 8th. We here in the South have had a couple of pretty significant snowstorms. We've had an ice storm. We have survived, thankfully, but you know, between power outages and the road shut down, it's been kind of a tough slog here the first little bit. Guys and girls, we have a fantastic episode for you today. It may be the best episode of the Drum Shuffle ever, in my opinion. And that is saying quite a lot. I am going to be joined by the great Jerry MacDonald right after this message from our sponsor, Los Cabos Drumsticks.
The best kept secret for drummers is finally out. Los Cabos Drumsticks may look like the sticks you grew up with, but these are not your father's drumsticks. Los Cabos Drumsticks is Canada's #1 drumstick brand, and they are coming to a retailer near you. With operations in over 28 countries worldwide, thousands of drummers have already discovered the Los Cabos difference. Using FSC certified wood from Canada and the US, Los Cabos make the finest quality drumsticks, percussion tools, and accessories on the market. The best news, Los Cabos Drumsticks offers you a ton of choice. They have 22 individual drumstick models and 14 percussion tools, many of which are available in 3 different wood types: maple, white hickory, and red hickory. Red hickory comes from the center or heart of the hickory tree and has been independently proven to be both stronger and more elastic than white hickory without adding a lot of weight. While most drumstick manufacturers have shunned red hickory, Los Cabos Drumsticks has embraced it, becoming the only established stick brand in the world to offer a full line of red hickory drumsticks. To learn more about Los Cabos Drumsticks, visit them online at loscabosdrumsticks.com, follow them on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and don't forget to ask for Los Cabos Drumsticks at your favorite retailer. Dare to be different. Join the Red Hickory Revolution with Los Cabos Drumsticks.
All right, guys and girls. As I mentioned before our break there, we're going to be joined by Jerry MacDonald here in just a moment. And I want to set this up in a truth bomb for just a second. If I'm being completely honest, I'm intimidated when I talk to Marco Miniman or Benny Greb or Doug Clifford or Simon Phillips or Rod Morgenstein or Troy Laketta, you know, some of the guests that we've had, Peter Erskine. I'm intimidated because these are guys that I aspire to have a career similar to theirs. I've always aspired to that. And 30 years in, obviously, that has not happened for me. I cannot be financially secure in the arts the way I can be in my day job. And with Jerry MacDonald, I see the mirror in many ways. Jerry has had a successful career as a musician, but that's not how he makes his living. And he's okay with that. And so am I. But I did not know Jerry before we did this interview. But we connect on so many different levels. It was like talking to a long lost brother. And who knows? He may be. I don't know where my dad was all the time. But all joking aside, Jerry and I had a wonderful conversation about his new project, Aeon Station. Great band. But obviously, everybody is going to know Jerry from his time with the Wrens. And of all my great regrets of my own band, Funnel, it's that we didn't get to do shows with the Wrens. And I mean that sincerely. I think when the Wrens hit the scene, nobody really knew what indie rock was. But these guys were writing the Bible on indie rock when they came onto the scene. One of the bands that should have been way bigger than they were. They should have had all the success in the world. They did have some, but these guys should have been way bigger than they were. And this is a great interview for a lot of different reasons. But I'm telling you, this is a great episode. So please help me welcome to the Drum Shuffle, Jerry MacDonald. Hey, good afternoon, Jerry. How's it going, man?
It's going well, Jamie. How are you?
Man, I can't complain. You know, we're kind of in the doldrums of January, and it's cold, so I don't like that very much. But other than a few weather complaints, life really couldn't be any better. How are things up in the northeastern corner of the United States?
Well, same. Life could be worse. It's cold, which I'm like a polar bear. I love it. So we're like, I love the snow. I love to see it. But outside of that, it looks like we're kind of emerging out. Hopefully COVID starts to retreat and slip into the backdrop here. I'm hoping. But, my kids are healthy. My wife loves me, and I have amazing friends and a band, and I have a great job and music. So it's all good. Could definitely be worse. That's for sure.
Yeah, man. I mean, I jokingly say, what else could a drummer ask for? I mean, if you're, you just get to do so many cool things as a musician, but, we talked a little bit before we started the interview, life goes on, there's day jobs for most of us nowadays, and families, and, when all of those things can work in harmony, that's really important for a balance in your life, Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's, simplicity is like the hardest thing to achieve. Right. And the life is just coming at us. And, my wife and I were blessed to have 4 kids that are, in various stages of being out of the house, and with work and COVID, and, to kind of have music, and the ability to, be involved in some kind of writing process and recording and hopefully performing well. It just kind of brings like this nice little level to some craziness. So yeah, it's fortunate, like we talked about before. It's great to have it as a part of our lives, and in whatever intensity level it is. So I'm thankful for it. That's for sure.
Yeah, man. And more power to you guys. And we'll get into some of this certainly, but as is my tradition or our tradition here on the Drum Shuffle, let's rewind all the way back, because there's quite a bit to unpack in your story here. And I do want to at least touch on some of that, for our listeners that may not be familiar, but you're a Jersey kid, right? When did drums get into your life, and what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was pretty early on. I think, before we go in there, I just wanted to, once again, man, I'm so impressed with the Drum Shuffle and, your background and cultivating legends and just just monsters of drumming in the best way possible on your podcast. And
I'm just lucky that people return emails. That's all, really. I mean, seriously.
Well, I'll tell you, it's like we talked about before. I think you definitely are moving the needle on awareness and leaving this amazing archive out there for people to dive into. And I was just really humbled when I was asked to talk to you. And so anyway, I say all that, so I appreciate it. So to your question, drumming was at a super early age. My mom and dad, I have a brother, just an older brother, and he and my mom and dad both worked. I grew up in the southern tip of New Jersey in a small seaside town called Cape May. And my mom and dad worked a lot. And my dad was a builder. My mom worked, all kinds of jobs from, selling newspaper ads to advertising. Just two of the hardest working individuals I've known in my life, and they just instilled this insane work ethic. And my brother and I, hopefully, it's insane level. But that said, we were watched quite a bit by my father's father, my grandfather, who was, right off the boat from Scotland. And he had this, transitioning over to music. He was a barber, and in his spare time, music was his passion. And he put together this band from, when I was a little guy, so probably 4 or 5 years old. He had a band, and the band members were former big band players that he had known in New York and Philadelphia and Atlantic City. And he had this baritone booming voice. He was awesome, and he played guitar. And he put together this band of he called bull fiddle player, big upright bass, and like this ragtime piano player. There was a female vocalist who was awesome. That was an old jazz singer. There was a banjo player, a sax player, and a trumpet player. And they looked like, my grandfather's buddies. And they used to tour nursing homes in South Jersey. And because he was watching my brother and I, we would tag along. And I would literally sit off to the side and listen. And I was listening to all these great, songs from the 40s and 50s, all these jazz standards and, just Sweet Georgia Brown, like all kinds of like crazy songs. And one day, I remember they were watching me, and my brother and I were with him at a nursing home show. And all of a sudden there's this blue sparkle Ludwig snare drum that appeared. And the big Bruno, I'll never forget his name, the big bass fiddle player, came over. I used to bang on my grandfather's guitar case off to the side, behind where they stored all the cases. And apparently he was watching me for months doing this, and he decided he bought me a little snare drum with some brushes, and he sat, instead of banging on my grandfather's guitar case, he showed me how to use these things called brushes, and they put me off to the side so I could just mess around with this thing. And within, another few weeks, I had a seat with the band, and I was their drummer, keeping time with brushes and this little snare drum at probably 7.
That's awesome, man. That's incredible.
Yeah. So that was like my grandfather and I, like, in between some of his clients at his old time barber, and I still have his, turn of the century, 1900s barber chair. But I would sit in that thing, and during breaks, he'd break out a guitar and he'd play, and I would, bang along on the chair with him. And it was really, really, it was a special time for me. It's a great memory. But I have lots of them, and it was because of him that
awesome.
That I started playing.
Yeah, man, yeah. That's incredible that somebody, that was, jamming with your granddad basically gave you a lifetime gift of, hey man, here, let's, you have this in you. Let's see what you can do. That's an amazing thing to have happen that early on in your life.
Yeah, that you summarized it way better than I did. You're right. It was a gift. And my grandfather, he always instilled he said, hey, I'm a barber and I don't have two pennies to rub together, but I got music. That was his thing. And his barber shop in this little town called Delhaven, New Jersey, was like this hang for all these old musicians that would come over. And, he would have, now they're, he would have 40s of Schlitz and all kinds of beer. And everybody, I remember by the time my brother and I were like in his shop, it was right next to a VFW. So he had all these old veterans coming over and just hanging in his barbershop, but they were all music heads, and they would sit and they'd have a short beer and a shot with my grandfather, and he'd have the guitar going, and he was always singing. It was really, really cool. And you're right, it was a total gift to have that. So
yeah, I mean,
it's cool.
Well, when you're baptized in it, you know that early on, it tends to stick. I mean, I say that all the time, like those early memories of music moving you as a child, it either gives you the bug or it turns you off from it, I think,
I'll tell you, man, there is one very vivid memory I have. You said like another thing, like how did you know, like to play drums? It was that, but when I became just, even before I was even 10, so it was right around the same time. I remember my mom and dad, we had this old Cutlass car and, with the white leather inside and everything. And I remember listening to Hotel California, whenever it would come on the radio, we would be in our driveway, like getting out or racing to get in the school or something. If that song was on the radio, I would not get out of the car until those timbale hits coming in on the brake.
Yeah.
And I remember like that was like it became like somewhat of a joke to my mom and dad. They're like, oh my God, if Hotel California comes on, we can't get out of the car. And it was always because those that little timbale hit. And I was just like, for whatever reason, man, that sucked me right in. And I just thought it was the coolest thing that I could ever hear.
Yeah,
so,
man.
Yeah, that was so anyway, funny things like that.
But I mean, that's the juice, right? I mean, that's what gets you going and keeps you going. And I mean, for me, it was, it was probably similar, it was in church, it was the music in church and, my dad, half-ass banging out 4 chords on a guitar in the house,
Awesome.
And having an older brother that was a college DJ, I mean, all of those things, those are the ingredients that get put into the cake batter, so to speak. That's like, oh, well, that explains it. It's just, it's amazing.
Yeah. It's funny how that happens at a young age. But man, the exposure you had with a brother who was a college DJ, you probably just had it like drinking from a fire hose, I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part it was. And, what was cool is, he would go away to college or whatever. And I would, of course, be in his room, digging through the stacks of, cassettes and vinyls. And, you're not supposed to touch that stuff. Right. But,
right.
I was baptizing myself in, Van Halen and Led Zeppelin and, all the stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And like, at that point you can't escape it. It's, it's either going to get in you or you're just going to be like, oh, well, that was a cool way to waste an afternoon. And it absolutely got in me, and there was nothing else that was going to let it out other than a drum set. You know what I'm saying? So,
100%. Yeah. It's funny. I remember, shortly, after like the music hooks are in you, and, I gravitated clearly to drums early on. And while the guitar stuff was really cool, I always thought it was something that I could play along to. Like it's never like, wow, I would love to do Eddie Van Halen is just shredding, this guitar. And I was like, I wonder how hard it would be to play along. Like I always thought of all those other things as accompaniment to my drumming, which is kind of, silly. But I remember, also having saints as parents, that, we didn't have a huge house, and my dad was a builder. He designed the house, and it was very, 70s built. So we had like modern in the 70s. So it was like this cavernous living room, like a cathedral ceiling. Back then, I was like, whoa, you guys have a cathedral ceiling. And what did they do? They allowed me, from my bar mitzvah money, by the way, I bought a used double bass swing-a-ling kit that was covered in freaking chrome. and it had three toms, 2 floor toms, and it had just a shitload of cymbals. And they let me set that up in the living room. And that was, they would all find things to do, because every day I'd come home from school and I just would wail the hell out of this kit. And, you're starting to learn like what sounds good and what doesn't, what you can do, what you can't. And man, it was, they were saints. So yeah, to your point, like a drum set was suddenly like this magical thing that once I had it, to be able to touch it and everything, it was, and then start to figure out how to play it was, man, to your earlier point, it's been a lifelong kind of gift that people turn me on to. So it's been, I look at it as a gift. Not that I have a gift, but the whole connection to it has been amazing, and it's led me down some pretty interesting paths, and to meet some people that are lifelong kind of brothers in arms, and have that same passion. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, your parents letting you set up, a giant double kick Slingerland set in your living room. I jokingly say all the time, the first 2 people into heaven were Mother Teresa and my mom. So, because she put up with so much shit with the drums from the time I was, 12 years old. I mean, I would literally like run from the school bus as hard as I could and fly down into the basement and, just crank up my speakers as loud as they would go and play along with every album I could get my hands on for hours every day. And she had to listen to that crap. A beginning drummer just blaring away for 4 or 5 hours every day. Man, that takes a real special commitment from your parents, right?
100% agree. Yeah, it's funny. I remember them, and again, like I didn't have headphones. It was like taking their stereo, and I just remember, Bon Jovi, Little Runaway. Remember that?
Oh,
that
sure.
Tune?
Yeah.
And between that and Van Halen and, Kiss, I was obsessed with Kiss back then, and just, and then, then I discovered Yes, and I was like, holy shit, like what is, those things don't none of the beats match up. Like how the hell do you count this? But like it was, by that time I was in the elementary school band, so I was starting to learn, now putting 2 and 2 together with the rudiments and learning how to read rhythm and all that stuff. But it was, it was like brain candy. It still is now. And like you and I chatted a little earlier, like having exposure to just seeing the amazing talent and skill that's out there from, Todd Suchman to, like Eric and Proto, like watching that guy play, or any of the Drumeo folks, like having all the videos of these people, like, man, the talent is just insane that's out there. And it's just, I don't know, I'm in awe just being able to see all this stuff unfold, but to somewhat have a seat, to be able to at least say that, I'm in whatever the club is. I'm on the lowest rung of the club as far as drummers, but I love it. And it's been a big part of my life for as long as I can remember. So it takes, but luckily we like, it sounds like you with your mom and, me with my grandfather and then my parents, like, always just supporting and saying, yeah, you know what, go figure it out. Go play it. If you love it and it makes you happy and it's not hurting anybody, do it, figure it out. And it was, growing up in Cape May, New Jersey, it wasn't like, there wasn't a whole lot of, it was a fishing, it's pretty much like an old fishing town. It's really old. And, a lot of amazing people, a lot of hardworking folks down there. And, it's not like there's massive industry. It's not any part of a big metropolitan area. Philadelphia and Atlantic City, kind of the closest. And that's, Philadelphia is like 2.5, almost 3 hours from Cape May. So it was kind of, you're kind of left on a little bit of an island trying to discover some stuff from all these influences. And my brother was a big influence and, introducing me to, the Stones and the band and the Beatles, of course, to, then getting into Devo. I remember when those records started coming out, I was like, holy shit, like what is going on? And I loved it. But I also loved all the old stuff that my grandfather played for me, all the old jazzers. And it's just, it's amazing to have these people in your lives to give those little influences to the point where I mentioned I grew up in this little town that there wasn't a whole lot of, I love it. Don't get me wrong. It's one of my favorite places on the planet. Culture-wise, it's not steeped in a lot of culture, just because of where it is and the history. But I had this band instructor, Ed Urevich, and this dude was like from Mars when I got in high school. And he was from Mars because he was like, he just looked crazy. He looked like some mad scientist. He had like kind of thinning hair on top, but he had like the, long hair going. And when I first met him, my freshman year of high school, and he was yelling, first day of band, he was yelling like how he hated instruments to be outside and be in competition because he had to get the marching band together for the football season. And he hated it. And it turns out this guy had played like backup keys on a couple Yes records.
Oh, wow.
So as I got to know him, and he turned out to be this massive jazz guy. And he started the jazz band, and I sucked back then, even more than I suck now. But he had said, "Hey, I want you to take a little piece of this and try to do this." And I remember the first jazz piece was this Hank Levy. If you remember, Hank Levy played with like Stan Kenton, but he was like this composer that he was a saxophone player back in like the 40s, 50s, 60s. And he was this crazy composer that he composed all these odd time signatures. So you had these young kids that were learning their instruments that most of them wanted to be there. But then you had the crazy orchestra leader that was throwing in like these insane jazz songs for us to try to learn that were in all kinds of crazy time signature changes and all this nutty stuff. And but anyway, that was all part of it. And same thing in like elementary school. We had another guy that our band instructor. He was back then, he's a young guy, but he was super, super into drum rudiments, and he was really good at it. And then he's the one that got the school to get the first drum set that the elementary school ever had. And my first song I ever played in public was for Mr. Weber's band in fifth grade. And I was a drummer, and we played Eye of the Tiger.
Oh, wow. I mean, just sold. Yeah, you take my money right there. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and he wrote a drum solo in it. And so I've been practicing for months before the spring concert to like do this little drum solo that he wrote. And we didn't have a drum set. So it was all like, we had, a bunch of snare drums that were turned off, and we had like it looked like a crazy vaudeville like drum set, because I had the concert bass drum, and they were using that kind of to get me ready to try to understand how to play a kick drum, the bass. And I'll never forget, like a week before the concert, they got me out of the class, and it was weird because I thought I was getting in trouble. Hey, so and so wants to see you in the band room, and they had this. Again, maybe it's a theme in my life now. I'm thinking about it. Actually, it's pretty cool. It was a blue sparkle Ludwig drum kit, and so here again, the blue sparkles. It's a Ludwig kit, and they sat down and said, "Hey, we got this for you to be able to play this, with the jazz band." And so that was my first performance. It was Eye of the Tiger with this little kind of, it was all eighth note tom, switching on the toms and the floor toms. But I did it in time. And I remember after that concert, that spring concert, it was like, wow, sitting behind a drum kit is is a power statement for me. It's like, I think I want to do this more and more.
Yeah, man,
So.
That's a power statement for anybody because, excuse me, my deal is I'm driving. Like I'm the driver, right? Everybody should be following you, kind of thing. So those are just such, seminal moments in everybody's life that it puts them on that path. And, it's amazing. Those teachers probably didn't think anything about it, but it changed your life completely.
Yeah. I need to mention one other, really important lady, and her name was Nan LaCourte, and she was in a drum and bugle corps. So this is now in my middle school, like 7th and 8th grade. And she introduced the concept of drum and bugle corps to my buddies who, we were the nerds. We were kind of the nerds in elementary school. And then, you start to hit puberty, and a couple of those guys became like big time wrestlers and real popular. But I stayed with the drums, and they stayed with me. And we had this friend group that became kind of this drum line for a 7th, 8th grade middle school marching band. There was no sports. That like she just wanted a marching band, so all we did was parades throughout the year. But she brought in a couple of her former drum and bugle corps friends because she had been with like the 27th Lancers. If you know DCI, Garfield Cadets were a big one out of North Jersey.
Yeah,
and Drum and Bugle Corps International is something that, just is astounding to me, the control, the stamina. Anyway, so she brought in this guy named Rick Ruddle, who wound up being in, I think, the Marine Ghost Corps. And he had played for president at the White House. He was, so he was in the Marines, and he was a snare drummer in the Marine Corps. And they brought the concept of this drum and bugle corps thing. So now I had, I was introduced to like jazz and the concept of rhythm from my grandfather, and then started to put the pieces together with sitting behind a drum set with Mr. Weber in elementary school. And then in middle school, I had this other massive influence with the power of like rudiment and drum and bugle corps, where they had this thing called the mile roll that they introduced to us. And they're like, hey, this was Rick, the guy from the Garfield Cadets and the Marine Corps. And we had our marching, there were 3 of us that played snare, and then we had a couple quads and then bass drummers. And he said, all right, we're going to march for a mile doing a roll, continuous roll while we march for a mile. And it was like the coolest thing that it was one of the coolest things because, it probably sounded like shit, but, I take it back. Actually, we actually got pretty decent. So like the drummer sounded like one snare, and it was 3. So we got pretty good at it. I still have those hand laid drum bugle corps drumsticks, and that's what I use to practice before I go to rehearse or anything. I bang into a pillow with those to loosen up. But I still have them from my 8th grade year. But yeah, that was really cool. And then I get to high school, and I have this jazzer in Mr. Urevich that introduced us to jazz, introduced me to like really trying to figure out how all this music stuff is supported, and it wasn't everything else accompanying the drums. It was the drums as an instrument, and it could be overpowering. It could drive a song. It could also destroy a song. and the concept of overplaying was introduced to me, where he said, man, you're overplaying. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but it sounds like I should know what that means. So yeah, all these cool people growing up that really helped lay a foundation. It was, I'm really, really grateful to them now that I'm talking about it out loud. I haven't put those pieces together in a long time.
Well, and I mean, it sounds to me like, you had a pretty well-rounded, base to build from. And, just doing the math in my head, it sounds to me like, and I'm going to kind of jump around here a little bit, but fast forward, to 1990, you would be in college around that time. That, of course, is when the founding of the Wrens happened. So were you guys all in college together? Is that kind of how that started?
No, not at all. It's pretty funny, interesting connection. So yeah, I was junior in college, and Kevin Whalen, Greg Whalen, the brothers Whalen, and Charles Bissell were these three dudes. I had known Kevin; he's a year younger than me, and he and I got to know each other a little bit, like twice a year. They would have like the All South Jersey Orchestra for high schools, and you had to audition, and it was like a quote unquote select orchestra, and you had to try out and audition, which was also another interesting introduction to that kind of thing, auditioning and rejection. And so Kevin and I were in this orchestra from a number of different South Jersey schools, and he and I gravitated because during the breaks, like this dude would go on the piano, and I was like, wow, this guy is a really talented dude, and he could not have been nicer. And we just started talking, and every now and again, whenever we would have those events, like he and I would say, hey man, it's good to see you. And, we'd chat, and we'd always, so now that was like in high school. And then I hadn't seen any of those folks for, years. So, and I never met Greg or Charles before that summer. And I was in college. I was a jazz performance major at Towson University. Coincidentally, the reason I went there was I only auditioned one college, and it was because Hank Levy, remember I mentioned those jazz charts that Mr. Urevich Hank Levy was the jazz director.
Okay.
So that was my drawing to Towson for there. And I was the worst drummer by far to be accepted into a jazz performance program. But anyway, going back to Kevin, Greg, and those guys. So it was the summer going into my junior year, I think. And I had auditioned, and I was going to be the drummer at Busch Gardens in Virginia for that summer. And I was going to be the drummer in Germany, their Germany village out there, playing all this oompa stuff.
Yep.
But, a paid gig playing drums, pretty cool. And my housing fell through for some reason. They had a fire, some crazy thing. And I was if I wanted to go down there, they would pay me, but I was going to have to find my own place to live as opposed to Busch Gardens paying for it. So it didn't make sense because I was able to make a lot of money in South Jersey during the summers to pay for school and, all kinds of stuff. So I was home for that summer unexpectedly. And so I was getting ready to do my, normal. I worked in kitchens and wound up bartending down there and being a food server. And I had a girlfriend that I met in high school, and we were still together. She's now my wife, by the way. And her very first boyfriend in middle school was this guy named Kevin Whalen. And Kevin and it was the dude that I had met in these orchestras every other, twice a year. His mother, this sounds complicated, but his mother was my librarian in school. So there was a connection that he knew that there was this drummer. I can't even believe that they didn't know any other drummers. So he was digging deep into his mental Rolodex to find any drummers down there. And his mother got in touch with my girlfriend's mother because they worked in the school district together. And hey, it's, Mrs. Whalen, and does Bridget still date that drummer? Yeah. Do you mind if my boys can they get in touch with them because they want them to come potentially play with them because they have a show? So that's how the connection was, because I was dating my girlfriend at the time. Kevin knew her because that was his first girlfriend in middle school. And he said, I know that, and I know that guy, and he's a drummer, and I think he went to school to play drums. So I get a call from Greg. We connect, and he said, hey, we have this show. Our drummer quit, and we'd love to have you come and see if you want to possibly play.
Now, is this
the audition?
Not to interrupt, but is this the infamous gig opening for The Fix?
That's the one.
Okay, all right. So good. I'm glad we're getting this in here.
So to your point, essentially The Fix was going on tour, and they were playing, like clubs. And I guess it would have been a smaller club in South Jersey, but the thing is, hey, if you want to open for The Fix, you're going to have to sell something like 250 tickets at $15
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
And Kevin and Greg said, yeah, we have a band and we'll sell those tickets. Two things. They didn't have a band. I don't know that they knew 250 people to sell tickets.
Right. Yeah. These pay-to-play things, man, they never work, ever.
No. So that was the premise. Like, they didn't tell me that that's what it was. They just said they had a show. And so I went up and we set up in their attic, and it was awesome. Like, these guys were, number one, they were cool. They were playing. They could play their instruments. I was pretty intimidated. Greg and Charles. I mean, it was. They were great, and we hit it off, and we all liked the same type of music. And then they told me, "Hey, we have this show." Then the show fell through. The Fix canceled, so we were kind of off the hook. But now we had, like, at least we thought we were this band. But I'll never forget. I set my drums up. We played for probably 3 hours up in Mr. and Mrs. Whalen's attic, and I had to get to work. And I said, "Hey, so I think I'm going to leave my stuff here." So I think I invited myself to be their drummer.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So I left all my shit in their attic, and I left. And then we started getting together more regularly, and I was their drummer. So
that's amazing. Well, you know why the Fix canceled that show? It's because you guys didn't sell 250 tickets.
Man, that would have been an abysmal failure on our end. So, but yeah.
So I will blame you for the demise of the Fix. It's your fault.
Fix. Yeah. So I apologize. We apologize to anybody that loves the Fix. So, but that summer we wound up playing, like, we were the house band on the Cape May Lewis ferry. It's like this big steel ferry that would go it was 90-minute crossing in the Delaware Bay from Cape May, New Jersey to Lewis, Delaware and back. And it was mostly, a lot of senior citizens on campers and RVs going to camp down in Delaware. And here you have these four maniacs playing in a completely steel deck. And it was cacophonous, and it was terrible. We were terrible. It was terrible. But that was our baptism into, like, and I think they paid us $5,000 for the summer.
Oh, wow.
And with that, we bought a 4-track. We bought some recording gear, and that's when we started, like, putting, always with the aim of putting our own songs together.
Yeah. Well, and that, and I don't want to gloss anything over, but I do want to be respectful of your time. But, so here's my memory of the Wrens. Okay. I'll give my Reader's Digest version. Back when I was having, some very limited success in Funnel, we put out our first record really early in 98. And, we did some very limited touring, but we were opening up for all these national acts. We kind of became the Central Kentucky, Cincinnati, we were the openers for these national acts that were coming through, clubs and theaters. And everybody thought we were going to get a record deal. Of course, that never happened, but I just remember we were really in tune for a while to, like, CMJ, what was it? College Music Journal out of New York.
Journal. Big time.
They had a big festival in New York, and we always applied to play at CMJ. And we thought, if we could just get to New York or LA, you know how bands think. But I remember starting to read about the Wrens, and I think this was probably second record, Secaucus, right? But you guys were critically acclaimed, critical darlings. And I don't even know if anybody knew what the hell indie rock was at that time, right? But that's what it was. But I just remember, like, there was all this buzz around you guys. And then, of course, there was this long hiatus. And then you put out Meadowlands, which is, I'm going to take some creative license here and say you guys were that generation's big star, like the best band that everybody talks about. These guys are my influence. They should have been huge, but they weren't. I mean, this is just like, the cat's pajamas of a genre. And that record was so, I don't want to use the word big, but it was hugely influential for a whole generation of musicians. So I know I unpacked a whole lot there in a span of, several years, but you guys started writing and recording, and is it fair to say that you guys were perfectionists about what you were putting out?
I think there was a balance, and Jan, it's really kind of you to remember it that way, and I mean, we listen like anybody, like we definitely put our 10,000 hours in, and when we moved to New York, that CMJ was like the big thing, and I remember we started playing. We all moved into a house in Secaucus together. Greg was a lawyer at that point, and he was like a magistrate meeting. So he was like before in a family court scenario. So before, unfortunately, when families were breaking up, instead of going right to a judge, they would go to Greg in the state of New Jersey, in Hackensack, New Jersey, and he would preside over that. So this guy had a cool job. Kevin and I were, working at a big arts management company, getting paid like out of college. I think our gross was $15,000 a year working in the arts, but it was a big tour. It was a big touring agency. So we booked they're responsible for the Met stars and bringing the Bolshoi Ballet over. But then they had 21st century artists like Stuart Copeland with the Rhythmatists, if you remember that.
Oh yeah, man.
Touring all that stuff, and so we were working at, and Charles was teaching guitar in North Jersey, and we all lived in his house. So during those early CMJ things, we were playing 7 nights a week. We were rehearsing multiple hours every single day, writing songs and playing. And that was the spark. We were like, wow, this is really cool. We moved up to New York. Our plan was to just figure out how to be a live rock band that could write our own songs and be self-sustaining. And I remember that the early CMJ, when Nevermind came out, and it was there were all these kind of grunge bands, and we were on all these bills, and we didn't fit into, for good or bad, we didn't fit into any style. And we were playing all kinds of different styles. And, we went through a phase where every song was less than a minute. I remember, so we'd bang through these things, and every song, we'd have a set list of 27 songs. And but we did those things. We played CBGBs going on. I remember we were fortunate to play CBs dozens and dozens of times. We got to see some amazing bands like Brainiac, who I'm sure you remember from Dayton when you were doing your Cincinnati stuff, and Girls Against Boys, and just so many insanely talented bands that were coming through New York, and we were right in the middle of it. So
That's amazing.
We were playing 2 o'clock in the morning set times, and playing with 3 people, and then doing the whole tour. So so we recorded. We got signed by back then it was called Grass Records, and Brainiac was on their way to becoming amazingly. They were the it band for us, and they actually got signed to Interscope. And then unfortunately, Tim Taylor passed away. This is over several years, but it was right around that time where we were honing what we were trying to do. So we recorded. You asked if we were perfectionists, and we kind of were, in the sense that we knew that you had to be good, you had to have a thing, and we tried to do that. And there was a time with our 2 guitars, Charles and Greg, we discovered they did a lot of seconds, ping ponging back and forth on all these parts, and it gave this really atmospheric feel to the songs. And Kevin and Charles and Greg are amazing songwriters, so we're very melody driven. So the melodies, the harmonies, and we fell into, we were a song band. We liked a beginning, a C-section, and an end, and that was kind of our formula for making songs. And we got signed by Grass, and so when we started recording, everything was done at home. And Charles really learned all that. Well, Charles took that. He jumped on the hand grenade for us in that he learned over the years how to produce, and he's pretty skilled at it. He's a very talented guy. And so we always recorded at home, which is why it took a little bit longer. And the perfectionist thing was, yes, we wanted to sound as good as possible. But doing it from home, there's a lot of learning on the fly, learning on the job. So it always took us a little bit longer to do things. But it wound up always sounding the way that we wanted it to sound. And, so it was great. And then, the writers and the reviewers of the songs, of the records, were always really kind to us. But we didn't fit. We didn't fit into any scene. New York was so massive. So we didn't really have a scene. We were out there and we were playing, 5-6 nights a week for years. But we weren't part of the New York scene. And oddly enough, whenever we tried to play in New Jersey, our home state, we'd have even less people show up to our shows. So that's when we started really starting to get out and tour and figure out how to tour, how to be a live band. And that's when things really started to pick up, with the Secaucus record. We had the major labels that were kind of starting to court us, but kind of, because we were still like this weird band that people were just like, oh, they haven't put out that many records and record at home. And, you and I talked earlier, kind of being our own worst enemies and definitely our harshest critic. But, we walked a path less traveled, and we did everything on our own, for good or bad. And sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. But I do remember other bands and the writers were really kind to us and what we were trying to do. But we didn't really play to that many people. We certainly didn't play many big shows with people until after the Meadowlands came out. That's for sure.
Yeah. And, I think, and we talked about this a little bit before we started the interview, the industry has changed so much. I think you guys might have been victim to something that my band was victim to a certain extent. During this time, for the listeners that maybe, this might be a little bit of inside baseball, but, in the late 90s, early 2000s, if a record label didn't know exactly, and I mean exactly, how to market you and which radio station would immediately pick up your single or whatever the case may be, they had no idea what to do with you, right? So if you were crossing a genre, if all of your songs didn't fit neatly into some, stupid marketing box, they just didn't know what to do with you. And they were very hesitant to take a chance on anything. And, case in point, look back to hard rock in the late 80s and early 90s. It was the rocking anthem song is the leadoff single, and then the slow power ballad is the second single, and you got to have the videos and then we're going to put you on tour with Whitesnake or Motley Crue. I mean, that was just the formula. Right. And if you didn't fit the formula, the record labels just kind of shrugged and went, I have no idea what to do with these guys. Is that a fair assessment of the Wrens?
But we were I was obsessed with the Pixies when they came out, and it was kind of like, wow, here's this weird band. They kind of scream. David Lovering happens to be one of my favorite drummers. So their model was they just played this indie rock stuff. And when indie rock started through the CMJ festivals, you started to see bigger and bigger record labels start to get more intrigued. And I think, Sub Pop blew it wide open with Nevermind or with the likes of Soundgarden and Nirvana. And that was that was 91. So to your point, so now it's starting to shift where we were like, wow, we're kind of in the sweet spot. You don't have to be hair metal, like a hair rock band. You don't have to have super angular jaw lines and play with your shirts off to get any kind of notoriety. was like the Pixies. Like it was all about kind of songs and getting to like cool stuff. CMJ was starting to, you know, if you remember, like, oh my God, I don't know, pick any band from the late 80s to the mid 90s. The record labels and some of the indies were getting pretty big at that point, or at least giving you a chance to go out and be able to make a living when you're on tour, to start to have like some sense of like guarantees. And suddenly, you know, there were publicists that were helping to support. You have tour posters. College radio was important.
Yeah.
But then in the late 90s, you know, so Napster had come online, the online was becoming a thing, and we were, like, my sense, Funnel and a bunch of other bands were at the precipice where, you know, I remember we were in big offices, you know, Interscope's office, and, you know, the Toadies helped introduce us to like Elektra and Interscope, and we were label mates with them. And if you remember, New Radiant Storm King and a couple other like bands that were starting to do stuff. And we were at the precipice, but suddenly, you know, big corporate mergers are happening because indie rock was becoming something that was cool. Yeah, 9 Inch Nails putting his stuff out, and now he had imprint labels, and all these big artists were starting to sign people, and no one knew what to do because of the file sharing, and the formats were changing. You know, they're starting to see, is the physical CD, the disc, going to be replaced by these files, which obviously it happened.
Yeah.
And even I remember our first record contract we signed was like 15 pages, or 5 pages that came over a fax. And we put out CDs, and we were like, wow, this is cool. And even then, there was still a line in the contract, if you remember, that for breakage, like 10%.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, man.
Top, right.
Well, and
for
CDs,
breakage,
you know, the first deal that we ever saw, CDs were still listed as an experimental format, and this was in 1998, and they paid less of a percentage than vinyl and cassettes.
Yeah, it was, and at that point, you know, we had all day jobs, and we were explaining, I remember we were in big lawyers' offices, trying to help get, you know, sign some of these big deals. And you know, there were some really, really helpful people. Luke Wood out at Geffen and DreamWorks, took us out to dinner, and, you know, that was our introduction, like, to the end. It's like, wow, you know what? This music business is really complicated. And not only that, but the economics, it was like a casino. The house is always going to win.
Yeah.
It's actually, we could have a whole other discussion. It'd be great to hear you do a session with other, you know, some folks that had front row seats to the changing industry. But it became a heartbreak because you realized that there was no way to get on top unless you were on tour constantly. You were selling a shitload of records, like physical records, and you had a mass support machine behind you to get on radio, to get the seats at the concerts, to then go out and buy the records. And it was a machine that was, by 1998, was like, good luck, guys. Like, you know, the end of the big record deals were gone. That era of massive advances.
Oh,
and
yeah.
We were offered $1 million to stay with Wind Up Records at that point.
Oh my God.
But it was like, we're like, holy shit, $1 million. But it was for 6 records. We had to live on it. We had to pay every cent plus money back. Right. So, you guys want cool tour shirts? Yeah, we can do that. That gets added to your tab. And it was like the worst kind of credit card, the highest interest rate. Like, you couldn't get out from minimum payment.
Yeah.
Because there was no support to create that stuff. So it led to a lot of homegrown stuff for us, which is why we recorded in our basements, why we, you know, would do all this DIY stuff. So we truly were an indie rock band.
Yeah, man.
And we couldn't make a living. It was hard. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, you know, and I don't want to spend too much time on this. Maybe we have you back to talk about this as, you know, kind of a pre-packaged, here's what the industry was like at the end of the 90s. But, you know, back in those days, it was like, oh, well, why wouldn't you just go to, you know, Electric Lady and record? Well, because it's $12,000 a day to go record there.
Yeah.
and that $1 million advance or whatever the number is, man, you eat through that in 60 days, making your record, and you're already in the red to the label. And if you don't sell 3 million copies of your debut record, you're going to be a tax write-off and destitute, essentially.
Yeah, I remember. We were making Secaucus, and at that point, this guy that he was very wealthy bought the label, and he's like, "Oh, you're gonna make," and he brought in all these former major label dudes to come in and help do the marketing. And I remember they showed up in our basement. It was like a tool shed in Secaucus to listen to the mixes for the Secaucus record. And I remember these guys looking at each other, and it was so gross. And they're just like, well, we hear a hit. This could be a hit. That's a hit. And they wound up sending us into some upstate insane studio to re-record these couple hits that they heard. And Jamie, it was the worst experiment. It was the worst. Suddenly we were like, holy shit, it was the most sterile, nauseating experience of our lives. And I think that drove us even more to say, screw this. We're going to stay the way we are, and we're going to just do what we do. And we didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. And, but we thought that at least it would be better to stick it out on our own than to go down this road in the industry that was going to be just a black hole. And so we were really stuck. And then finally, we put the Meadowlands out, and that was kind of like a closure for the 4 of us. We did it with a friend. We own the masters, and we just did it with a buddy, Corey Brown, of Absolutely Kosher Records out in San Francisco. He was a longtime friend. He was a record buyer at a couple record stores on the West Coast, and we put out the Meadowlands on our own. But again, as to your point, it was received very well in the universe, but we didn't have one key thing. We had no support behind it. We didn't have any marketing. We had nothing. We had no distribution. We paid for publicists to help us just get the word out. But man, it was hard. And there was what happened is we wound up supporting that record for 5 years, but we all had day jobs.
Yeah.
We were, and to make ends meet, I had a child at that point, and it's we would be at our jobs on a Thursday. I was working in fintech at this point. I was at my job on Thursday. I'd leave Thursday night, drive to New York, meet the rest of the guys. We'd fly to Germany and play a festival and then some shows. And we'd fly home Sunday night so we could all be at work on Monday. And we did that for a couple of years, flying to Spain, flying to the UK. It was, you talk about burning the candle at both ends. It was, we had a lot of nice press. There was a lot of, to your point, we were critically received well, but financially we never had, there was not a quote unquote payday ever. We just lost an incredible amount of money.
Yeah. Well, there never is.
To live, to dream.
I mean, there never is when you do it on your own, but you're not one to rest on your laurels, obviously, but you can sit back at this point, we're all these years removed from Meadowlands, 18 years, 17 years, something like that.
Yeah, it was 2003.
Oh, wow. Okay. So 19 years. So, so you can now point back to that and be like, yeah, I did that. We did that as a unit. We didn't have, Elektra or Warner Brothers. This was us, and that's something to be proud of for sure, man. And it's just, you were talking about, you were in fintech, and, I don't talk about my day job very much, but I've worked a day job for, 20 plus years. I manage 401k plans. That's my day job.
Yep.
Yeah. And a lot of people, people from your business life, I'm curious, did you ever get this? They go, well, why don't you just do that full time? I've had buddies come out to a gig or whatever that I work with, and they're like, man, you don't need to be doing 401k plans. You need to be a musician, And I try to explain to them, it's not that simple. When you have a wife, a child, a mortgage, you can't just jump in the van for 6 months and make, $80 a week. You just can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not sustainable. The lifestyle, and there's plenty of people that do it, I'll tell you the conversation I've had more often, around that. Cause like you, I work in I'm in the finance industry. To make ends meet, I wound up Forrest Gumping my way from music to, marketing, but always in the arts, into institutional investment sales. So, I'm part of I raise money for an institutional investment manager based in Los Angeles, and they've been unbelievable. But when I've kept my life pretty separate, in that way, until I realized that there's so many artists in all these industries, but just in my universe, I've met so many people where we've connected on either they're a visual artist or they're stand-up comedian, they were an actor or an actress, or there are so many people that are musicians, and it's opened so many doors, that connection of music in the industry where there's so many people. There's this one guy that I met just last year. It turns out he was at Harvard with like a jam band, and they became pretty big, and they were about to quote unquote make it. And somebody got like a doctoral, like they went off and did some doctoral work, and now he is an investment. He's a portfolio manager for endowments and foundations. But he and I talked for the first time. I cold called him last year. We talked for 2 hours about music and the music industry, but there's all those little connections. So yeah, I've had conversations with the folks that think that, oh, you're in a rock band, so you guys just like got hammered and you're on the road, and it was like living like rock camp fantasy. It was like, you know what? Actually, it was a lot different. It was we had slept on stages, we slept in our van. Van was broken into while we were in the van. We didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. We couldn't pay our rent. We couldn't pay for our bus passes to get to our day job. So we broke down in Fargo, and our heater went in our shitty van, and we had to drive for literally a month tour in sleeping bags until we got south into California and into the desert. So it's not so glamorous. So, but I wouldn't change it.
Well, yeah, no, but I mean, everybody has those stories, and they're the real stories. I think a lot of that other stuff, what people think went on, is the crap that the labels sold to everybody. Like, oh yeah, these guys threw their TVs out the window of their hotel room. It was like, what hotel? I mean, what tour is that? Because that's not how I did it. I wasn't staying at the Riot Hyatt in LA. That's not how that works. And you get paid from your Wednesday night gig, and you're like, okay, we have enough gas money to get to the Thursday night gig. Thank God. We don't have to put this tank of gas on, my mom's Amex or whatever the case may be. And that's the the reality for so many young bands. I mean, that's just how it goes. But we could have an episode on that even, for sure. But before I let you get out of here, we've got to talk about Aeon Station, because, this escaped my radar. But, Meadowlands 19 years ago, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Here's this record from a band called Aeon Station, and it's essentially 2/4. It's half of the Wrens. Am I getting the fraction right there?
It's 3/4 of the Wrens.
Okay, actually. Okay. So both Whalen brothers are involved in?
Correct.
Okay, and you on drums, and the record is Observatory, and it came out the end of 2021. Am I getting all this right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So
and it was Rock Dream through Sub Pop, which is again another kind of milestone achievement for each of us to be like, wow, we're going to be like to be a footnote on the Sub Pop history is kind of cool.
Yeah, for sure, man. But I know that, for people that were big fans of the Wrens, they waited. There were some fits and starts about maybe there's going to be a follow-up to Meadowlands, and then no, there's not really going to be a follow-up. And, I think it would be unfair to say this is the follow-up to the Meadowlands, but this may be as close as we get. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, sure. It could be. I think there's always hope that we can come together and put out another Wrens record, a follow-up. But you're right, the Aeon Station record is essentially, Kevin, there's three songwriters in the Wrens. Kevin and Charles are the principal songwriters, and then Greg Whalen is like George Harrison, kind of secret weapon tucked away, and every now and again will put out a song. We're like, whoa, that's an awesome song. And it's been like that on every record. So yeah, we had the follow-up to the Meadowlands has been in the making since, I don't know, it's been a long time, like decade.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was on Charles' lap because he does aside from writing half the songs. So Kevin and he, contribute equally to the songs. There's Kevin's songs and the Charles songs, and then there's the production that goes into it. And Charles is a really talented and skilled producer, and he is definitely the perfectionist. If you've read any of the press on Aeon Station's record, and to make a very long, drawn out, boring story short, essentially Kevin has had some, has been away from music for a long time as we waited to have the new Meadowlands record ready. Kevin's songs were, ready over the last 5 years, and Charles has been working on his songs, and he is a perfectionist in a appropriate way. But there was never an agreement on when we could put this record out, and I think Charles wasn't completely satisfied with his songs just yet. Kevin was ready to go, and all along the way, there's been, leaks and interviews about the record's ready. 2 more weeks. And, we're all not getting younger. And Kevin's, personally, he and his wife, they have 2 beautiful boys, and they have their youngest son, Ryder, who's just this beautiful kid, is autistic. He's diagnosed at 1.5 years, and that's presented, some reevaluating of life, and for them, like, how are they going to, it's just changed their perspective. And as we get older and, you lose people and time is marching by, Charles too, Charles, thank goodness, beat about with cancer in the middle of all this too. So there's a lot of things coming in and out. And at the end, Kevin decided, after some band conversations, that just say 3/4 of us heard one thing and 1/4 of the Wrens heard something else or wanted to do something slightly different. Kevin said, "You know what? My songs are done. I'm just gonna put them out. I need to get them out into the world for his soul, just to have the music out there." And so he had 5 songs that were going to be on the next Wrens record. And then he always has demos, like Charles and Greg. They always have a ton of demos. And right before Christmas 2020, Kevin asked Greg and I to go into the studio, and we did some file sharing, which was awesome. So over COVID, I learned how to work with Logic and my electric drums. And all of a sudden, the spark started happening, and we started demoing a ton of stuff and file sharing, and it became super, super fun. And before you know it, we had probably 10 songs, and we went in and recorded like 5 or 6. And Kevin put them, he worked with Tom Perjure, the producer, who plays guitar in Aeon Station. And I went in and recorded 5 songs in a day, right before Christmas, and then Kevin went in and overdid guitars and put bass and keys and he sang, and that's Observatory. That's this record. So, it's caused a little drama in the internet universe. But,
well, I mean, yeah, but
Charles is gonna, he's gonna put out. I hope he puts it out at some point soon, his songs, and then maybe the two of those, you could kind of squish together and what do they call it? The kids call it a smash up. You might have a a gigantic double Wrens record, but so hopefully there isn't a Wrens record at some point. But right now we're just enjoying this, this Observatory. Kevin wrote some phenomenal songs.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah,
and they're fun. And now we actually start playing them live in March, and then we're gonna go down to South by Southwest and play. And I'll tell you another life dream. Like I'll be a CNC custom artist.
Oh wow, awesome!
Drums that,
yeah, man.
Jake is building now. So.
Bill and Jake Cardwell are some of the finest drum makers in the world. They really are. Those things are special. Bill Cardwell, for a lot of people that don't know, of course, Ringo Starr has always been a Ludwig guy. Now, when Ringo gets a new Ludwig kit, they're immediately shipped to Bill Cardwell to do his magic on them. So it's pretty cool, the kind of work that those guys do.
And Jake, when he was helping kind of guide me through this process of building this kit, it's a whole crazy story how I came into possession, but I own one of Joe Morello's old 66 Silver Sparkle Ludwig jazz kits that he used, and I got it through one of his friends. It's a long story, but anyway. So that's what I've played with. That's what's been recorded on Secaucus and the Meadowlands. But I wanted to do something fresh start for Aeon Station. And when I went into the studio, I've always loved CNC kits. I borrowed them here and there. I played on them in certain places. I always felt that I just loved their warm sound. And I think a lot of it's because of my old Ludwig days as well. And Jake said, "Oh, well, they do this, how they're putting these drums together to replicate the old 60s Ludwig sound, using the different types of wood and how they reverse the layers." I'm so excited to get this kit. So, those guys have been amazing.
Yeah, man. Well, they're I think they call them Gladstone shells. Those are butter, man. Those are good. So, you answered my question. So you guys are going to do some live shows, which is pretty amazing. The record, I spent some time with it, listened to it, and I'm not going to mislead anybody and say, "Oh yeah, it sounds just like the Wrens," because it doesn't. But that's one of the ingredients when you listen to it, right? I mean, it seems like a logical continuation, and you guys have put out a really good record, and I think it deserves a listen from everybody, for sure. And the fact that you guys are going to go out and play is what's most exciting to me. There's a ton of people. Everybody put out a pandemic record. Everybody put out a pandemic record, right? Like, because that's all we could do as musicians was get into the studio and record. And, the bass player in Funnel and I, he runs a great studio. I do a lot of session work with him. We jokingly say, we've probably got 12 terabytes of shitty songs, right? So
that's awesome. Yeah.
Everybody put out a pandemic record, but nobody, or a lot of folks, I should say, are saying, yeah, man, as soon as we can, we're going to get out and play these things. It was just hey, this is what I did over my COVID vacation, right? So the fact that you guys are going to be playing is pretty exciting. Now, you're doing South by Southwest. Are there going to be additional dates added after that, or do we know yet?
Yeah, our first show is the week before South by Southwest. We're playing March 11th in Brooklyn, Queens, at TVI. So that'll be our first performance in, being on stage in, I think, 7 or 8 years with Greg, Kevin, and I. And then we have Tom Berjour, who is an amazing guitar player. He was producer, and Tom's worked with some pretty serious. He's produced some pretty serious records. Like he's worked with Not a Surf and Guided by Voices, a couple other bands. Actually, a lot. I think he's done like 80 records. He's talented. And then a very talented young lady named Lisa Opfer, who is playing keys and bass when Kevin is not playing keys and bass. So they're swapping back and forth. And she's also singing, and she's very talented. So yeah, there'll be 5 of us on stage, and we're excited. But there will be more dates too. I think we're going to go out and do Seattle and Portland. I think we're going to play for John Richards at KEXP.
Cool.
In April, and then I think we're going to do some club dates out there, and then I think San Francisco, LA, and hopefully do some festivals in Europe. And I don't know. It's cool, but I'll tell you, the coolest piece of all this is my kids, my family get to come.
Yeah,
see,
man.
However you define success, like this is success for me in music, and it's been like this 30-year odyssey, like this journey. And now my kids are, my oldest is 23, my youngest is 14. I have 4 of them, my wife and I, and we're all going out to South by Southwest.
Yeah,
so they're all going to see this thing. So it's and Kevin and Greg's kids. It's just, it's pretty cool. So we're excited, nervous, but excited.
Well, you haven't had that experience yet, and this isn't about me, but I do want to share with you how incredible it is.
Please.
Funnel had not done a show for, I want to say 11 years, and my daughter is 17. Yep. Right. So she had never seen Funnel. She had only heard about it. She had heard the records. She had seen old videos, but she had never seen us live. And we did our first show in like 11 years in late 2019. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. And we had her and my godson, our bass player's son, who is 18. We had them introduce us.
Oh man, I have chills. You saying that?
So it's way different. I'm up there and I'm thinking, wow, this is cool. It feels like my first bicycle. It's whatever the case may be. I'm having a good time, but I'm looking over and I see my daughter standing there, and that it's absolutely soul quenching. You know what I mean? It's like that full circle experience, and that show went so well that we've actually, we've played again. Unfortunately the world shut down right after that show, but we played a festival this fall. It's just, I don't know if closure, I don't know if closure is the right word, but if it ended today, I would feel like, yeah, we said everything we needed to say, right?
How about fulfilled?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great word for it. But it was like, we didn't just fade out and go away. It was like, yeah, man, we're going to get together and do another show. And, it doesn't even matter, and I know the question is going to flood in, Jerry didn't say if they're going to be doing any Wrens songs in their live sets. And you can answer that if you want to or not. I don't think it matters.
We will.
Okay, so good. But,
yeah.
But, the whole point is you get to do it however you want to. It's on your own terms at this point, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like you, man. And congratulations. Like to have that achievement, having your daughter and your God, like that's for us. In the beginning, we talked about like we never let the dream go. The dream's just changed, right? It's evolved to different things. And for me, it sounds like for you too. It's kind of like, on your own terms, and to be able to listen. The fact that anyone shows up to listen to people play original music.
You're right.
Awesome, number one. And the fact that there's people out there that know Funnel songs and they can sing Funnel songs and that look forward to seeing you guys play and has your songs that you guys wrote as an archive out there that's on playlists and whatnot. Like, that is super cool. And to have your daughter, I got to imagine your daughter's friends and their friends, like, listening to Funnel. That's what the dream is turned into for us. It's like, hey, yeah, you guys are a bunch of these old dudes, but suddenly you have some relevancy in the art world. And here's some cool music, and the fact that writers are writing about it. My kids are like, wow, you know what? It's like, yeah, you put your 10,000 hours in, you can do something. And, but it's now, to your point, it's our definition of success. It's not, we don't have to go out and try to sell a bazillion records or fill all these seats. We said, like, if we played a house party to our friends and people liked that it sounded cool, like, fulfillment, there it is. It's the cycle, like the circuit is complete. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's fundamentally different than when we were out there, like living in the van, like, missing flights in Europe because the van broke down, and trying to buy a pizza with, and you're short on cash. Like,
right.
It's changed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's an awesome story, Jamie. That's fantastic. I hope you guys do continue to play together.
Yeah, we are. We got together last weekend, as a matter of fact, just in the basement, just, in the studio, just to have a good time. And,
right.
I think part of it comes with age. And, I've been told my whole life, well, when you get to be my age, you'll understand. And I always thought that was utter bullshit. Every time somebody older than me said that, I thought it was horse shit, but it's very true. When I was 22, 23 years old, I thought, God, if we don't sign to a major label, what a failure I am. If we don't get a nice tour bus and, sell out arenas, God, what a failure. I mean, what are we even doing this for? Now, as a 45-year-old man, 20 something years removed from that, I'm like, hey man, we played at the local brewery here in Georgetown, Kentucky, and we had like 600 people show up. It was great.
That's phenomenal. But you guys had that drive, right? So that drove you guys. Like, there's no logical reason that, a bunch of people in a van with, like, chasing after something that is there's such a tiny fraction of the population can achieve, like, that financial success. Because at the end of the day, us chasing, like, tour bus and all that, like, there's probably going to be some financial rewards that come with that. But the odds were so stacked against you in such a way, because art is so subjective, and it's like, to have people like you and want to pay money because they like you, and to have you be able to sustain a career, like, there's no logical reason to chase something where the odds are so great, with one exception. It just makes everybody click. And there's a piece that, if you don't have it, and what I've learned in, the years where the Wrens have been dormant, is not having that piece. When I finally got to experience it again, going into the studio, so just the writing process with Kev and Greg, recording these parts and having talking drum parts, talking rhythms, there's a song on the record called Fade on this Observatory record. And we decided that we needed to be really rhythmic, and just being part of that process again, to say, oh, well, let's make the drums kind of drive the song instead of just being, like, in the background just to keep the beat. And, like, having that again, like, surface in my life, I didn't realize how much I missed it. Yeah. And the last point I would make on all that stuff and all that drive is, if I didn't have the Wrens and getting kicked in the teeth and punched in the face and told no 99% of the time, I would not be in a position where I had the balls to go into the investment industry, knowing that it was like a completely different language, it's a completely different set of standards and expectations. But having the confidence to go and say, if I can live through what I've lived through and still come out the other end and be happy and fine, and to have my wife that loves me, I'm pretty sure I can handle this business. And it's helped me in this career as well. So that band experience has helped make, and you'll hear Kevin and Greg, and I'd imagine Charles too, saying the same exact thing, that it really helped frame our entire life in our adulthood and how to achieve things and problem solve. So
Yeah, man.
Every kid should go out and start a band.
Listen, I completely agree. 100%. And the examples are plenty. Stuff happens at work and my boss is like, man, how are you so calm about this? And I was like, well, you are going to pay me next Friday, right? That's like, if I get, it's not like I'm going to have to do all this extra work. And then the club owner goes, yeah, fuck you. We're not paying you tonight. So this is the least of my problems that I've faced. This is, if this is the worst adversity I'm going to have this week, man, I win, Man,
Jamie, I'm with you. I can't say enough about this whole, for you and I, it's like, the foundation started with rhythm and discovering drums and discovering how to make yourself seem and be interested and engaged by these, stupid pieces of wood with skins on them. And it's like, and there is something magical about it. There's something when you're able to discover, independence with your limbs and be able to play two different time signatures. And it's like, holy shit, like that is kind of cool. Now it means nothing to anyone else until you find, your Kevin and Greg and Charles and Tom and Lisa's that, and it comes together in this now, this newest thing with Aeon Station and Observatory. Like these songs are, man, I didn't realize how much I missed it, but it's been a magical part of my life that I'm so pleased is not dormant. You know what I mean? It's really cool. So I hope I get the same experience you had with Funnel and your daughter, which I know I'm going to, and that's South by Southwest. So it's going to be cool.
Yeah, man.
We're excited.
Well, just make sure you take some hankies with you. I'll just tell you that right now, because if you're anything like me, you might shed a couple of tears, because it's pretty cool, man. It really is. But Jerry, man, this has been amazing. I've done, I don't know.
I really appreciate it.
140 of these. This is one of the best episodes ever, I think, because it's just so insightful, and we got down in a lot of rabbit holes, and I appreciate you, indulging my frenzied style of interviewing and jumping around all over the place. But seriously, I mean this, we got to do a part 2, for sure. So keep us posted on how the tour goes. Let us know what's going on. But we'll have you back anytime your schedule allows, and we'll dig into some of these other things that we just barely scratched the surface.
Oh man, that's really, really kind. I really appreciate it, Jamie. I feel like, I've been talking to an old friend, so we connect on many different levels from, when we chatted before you started the podcast, and I look forward to chatting, off the podcast, on the podcast, and hopefully we can do fist bump or, tap elbows or whatever hell everybody's going to be doing once the world opens back up. But yeah, this is, congratulations to you on the podcast and, connecting Funnel in your life and professional life. And it's exciting. I'd love to have a part 2 or just talk. So I really appreciate it. Very, very, very kind of you to have me on. So thanks so much.
Yeah, man, we appreciate the time. But yeah, you can count on that conversation not being recorded. That one's going to happen because we got all kinds of shit to stir up between us. So, yeah. But anyway, well, brother, listen, have a good rest of your day, and we'll do it again. But we're going to send some folks your way to check out the record and check you guys live when you roll through their town. Thank you so much for being a part of this, man.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
All right. Talk to you soon, brother.
Yep. Take care, man.
See you. All right, guys and girls, that's going to wrap up episode number 142 of the Drum Shuffle. A million thanks to Jerry MacDonald for taking time out of his schedule to do this. You guys have got to go see Aeon Station at South by Southwest. If you're up there in Brooklyn, Queens, those shows are coming up here before too long, first part of March. So literally, 3.5 weeks away to go see these guys. Pick up Observatory, the new record. It may be the follow-up to the Meadowlands. we don't know. As Jerry said, there's always hope that there's a follow-up to the Meadowlands by the Wrens, but this is 3/4 of those guys doing their thing. And I've heard the record. It is a great record. It should be part of your library, in my opinion. Jerry and I are going to talk again, both off the podcast and on the podcast, and I know it's going to be great. Now, I do want to tell you something. I got an email from Jerry today, and I have not responded to it as of yet, but I'm going to. But Jerry actually called Jake Cardwell at CNC Drums, and when we got done with the recording of this podcast, I said to Jerry, I said, man, the universe is screaming at you to make this new kit that you're having built a blue sparkle kit. And I didn't think much of it, but he emailed me today and told me that he reached out to Jake Cardwell at CNC Drums. It's going to be a blue sparkle kit. So I couldn't be any happier to have gotten that email today. It's just so stinking cool to know Jerry's backstory and that first drum being a blue sparkle and his new kit, as he said, the last kit he'll ever buy to be blue sparkle. I think he used the word fulfilled. I think it absolutely completes the circuit and full circle for sure. So I can't thank him enough for coming on. I can't thank each and every one of you enough for listening to this. I know it's a longer episode than normal, but such a good interview with Jerry. Thank you so much for tuning in. We simply cannot do this show without each and every one of you doing it week in and week out when we have an episode up, listening and paying attention to what we're doing. We sincerely appreciate it. I can't thank you enough. Now, the question is always, what can I do to help the show? Share a link to this or any episode with a friend. That's the biggest thing. Hit the thumbs up on whatever platform you're using. Leave us a review. The algorithms work in such a way that the more reviews you have on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Pandora, Amazon, whatever the case may be that you're using to listen to this show, leave a review on that podcast player. Please. It helps us more than you'll ever know, and we do appreciate it. We answer every single email that we get here. The Drum Shuffle Podcast at gmail.com is the email address. We take requests. If there's somebody you want me to talk to on this show, tell me, introduce me. I'll make it happen. So please keep those emails coming. We appreciate that as well. You can always find more information about me over at jamieeads.com. And of course, the podcast website is thedrumshuffle.com. So your homework assignment, as always, if it's safe for you to do so, go see a live rock show before it all goes away. So until next time, may your head stay strong and your sticks never break. Cheers, everybody.